The Industrial Revolution of the 1800s had a dramatic effect on economic and social life around the globe. The economies of industrializing nations shifted from agriculture to manufacturing, from rural to urban. Thanks to innovations in technology, energy production, and manufacturing, factories churned out large quantities of new products at lower prices. Almost overnight, cities swelled to support new industries. Soon, people were flocking to the growing cities, looking for work and a better life. But factory life did not live up to its promise. The workers had few rights. Wages were low, hours were long, working conditions were often unsafe, and unemployment, or worse, was always just an accident away. These harsh working conditions were common at the turn of the 20th century. In 1906, Upton Sinclair published The Jungle, a novel about the American meatpacking industry.
At the time that The Jungle was written, the plants were horrible places to work. They were full of violence, they weren't clean, and frequently diseased and dead animals were slaughtered and made into food.
Sinclair's novel follows the story of a young Lithuanian, Jurgis Rudkus, who arrives in America seeking freedom and opportunity. He finds work in a prosperous and, as he learns to his dismay, filthy Chicago meatpacking plant.
Think about an individual coming from a rural agricultural kind of society, whether you think about Jurgis coming from Lithuania or a black migrant coming from the deep south, Mississippi, coming into a large industrial city, working in a mass production industry like meatpacking. Sinclair was writing on the crust of a giant wave of social and economic change that took place in the course of the late 19th century.
Before writing The Jungle, Sinclair spent 7 weeks around Chicago's meatpacking plants. He studied details about the work itself, the home lives of workers, and the structure of the business.
Upton Sinclair went into the plants and he saw dead animals being slaughtered. He saw filth all over the plant. He saw products going into sausage that shouldn't have been there. But more importantly, he came out of the plant radicalized by what happened to the workers, how they got chewed up the same way the food did.
Sinclair used the horrors he witnessed as the basis for Jurgis's fictionalized story. As Jurgis discovers, work in the plant involves back-breaking labor in unsafe conditions. When a worker becomes ill or gets injured, he's cast aside, and hundreds of jobless men fight to replace him. Workers in the pickling room have their fingers eaten by acid. Cooks live in danger of falling into open vats of boiling meat.
It was live or die, sink or swim. So the deadened conditions in the slaughtering house and that death that permeated also permeated the battle between the owners and the workers.
It created this traditional, naturalistic, deterministic story in which human beings, just like the animals that are pulled up the chute in the packing plants, and they are pulled up with this sense of optimism at the beginning, this idea of going to America, becoming successful, leaving behind the problems of Europe, and then they go down just like the animals, and they are processed too.
When The Jungle was published, there was a public outcry. Americans were outraged, and they urged the United States Congress to pass the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. More federal laws followed that prevented packers from adding fillers and impurities to meat. And United States Department of Agriculture inspectors were put in every meat plant in the country. But this wasn't the reaction that Sinclair was looking for. He wanted to help the workers. "I aimed at the public's heart," he wrote, "and by accident, I hit it in the stomach. It took decades to improve the working conditions Sinclair criticized in the jungle. The changes came from inside the factories themselves, from members of labor unions making demands of the factory owners. The jungle's pro-worker viewpoint may have been lost on the public at the time, but its powerful message is clear today.
It was a microcosm, a look at the 20th century as it was unfolding and all the different battle lines between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. And in that sense, it's an enduring classic.